Hi, my name's Nicola. I'm one of the founding directors of an organisation called Flourish Together, and we're a social enterprise that supports people to develop other social ventures. We reinvest our profits in supporting women as a force for social change, and we're really thrilled that Sector 3 and partners have asked us to come and deliver a few of their webinars for their ideas and inspiration training sessions. So we ran a number of events in person, and we've now got a series of webinars for listen again links and to help people catch up on what they might have missed. So let's get started. This first series focuses on a range of topics, and we've broken them into bite-sized chunks for you to listen in at your leisure. This first series contains 4 short webinars where we'll be looking at who develops social ventures and why, developing and strengthening your ideas, and we've got some tools and tips for doing that. We've then got a session on legal structures for social ventures and governance and helping you think that through. And then we've got a session on an introduction to funding and achieving bid writing success as a final session in this series. So this one today is looking all about who develops these things and why, really to help you think about discovering social enterprise and whether or not it's something that's right for you. You might have been dabbling with this for some time. You might have been running your own social venture and you're sort of reflecting on your own sort of practice and growth and where you're going next. Or this might be a whole new topic for you, and we want to help you think that through. So, we'll be thinking about who develops these social enterprises or voluntary community and social enterprise organisations. What are their attributes and characteristics? What are they like? How might they differ from other people or other types of entrepreneurs? Are social entrepreneurs born or made? What might some of the differences and the differences in support needs be for people who are looking at setting up these kinds of ventures? So, discovering social enterprise. You may well have people, organisations, projects that come to mind when we think about social enterprise. Ultimately, people who develop social enterprises are using an entrepreneurial solution to tackle a social issue. They're using enterprising techniques and business models to generate income and hopefully surpluses to reinvest in community benefits. Unlike private businesses where the profits go to the individual, to shareholders and that sort of thing, in a social enterprise, the income that gets raised remains for the organisation and or the benefit of the community, and often surpluses are sought in order to create new projects and organisations of community benefit. So there is a difference there, and I've just got some examples here. So there's a group at the top there who are kind of dancing, and they're called Dance Syndrome. They're a social enterprise based in Lancashire, and they support people of all abilities and various disabilities to dance and enjoy dance, and they do a lot of work also around equality and inclusion. So in addition to the shows and the workshops and the training that they do, they spend time with the public sector and corporates, helping them with away days and various other equality and diversity training to broaden their thinking and broaden their understanding recruitment practices and other things. So a really interesting model to look up. There's a lady there with a sort of purple and blue scarf on. That's Halle Moravec. She's based in Manchester, and she's a serial social entrepreneur. She is a nutrition lecturer, senior nutrition lecturer at Manchester Met University, but alongside that, and in order to bring learning to life for her students, mainly undergraduate students, she has set something up called Met Munch, and Met Munch does all sorts of healthy living, healthy eating, and sort of nutritional awareness, and they go out and run events, and it's a fantastic award-winning student-led social enterprise, which has actually evolved into something called, well, not evolved into Grow, but they've set up a spin-off business called Grow Meat Free, which is a vegan cafe based in the atrium of Manchester Metropolitan Business School, and fantastic place, great cafe that's bringing staff, students, graduates and the wider public in to experience the facilities there, but great food and very healthy food, and obviously good for the environment. The next one along is Soap Futures. So this is a project developed by Beth Powell, and Beth's done a lot of work with women from very diverse cultural backgrounds, where often English isn't their first language. And Soap Futures was a way of bringing women together to learn English, to make friendships, to feel integrated into the community, and develop confidence and skills, whilst make soap. And this soap can then be sold at a premium to then reinvest back in learning, training and development opportunities for that group. So again, another social business model. We've got some thespians on a bus here. So this is an organisation called Shiverpool. They were originally set up, Shiverpool, when they were studying at university. A lady called Alex and a brother John set this up back in the day. It's an multi-award winning social business now, based over in Liverpool, and they do heritage tours, and it's all part of bringing the heritage, history and culture of Liverpool to life. And rather than just go on a standard walk and point out buildings, they bring it to life through a kind of dramatic story that they will tell on various tours and kind of ghost tours around the city. They've also set up a theatre and education initiative. So a big part of what they were trying to do, in addition to promoting leisure and tourism, getting people out and about, promoting the great sort of culture and history of Liverpool, they were trying to make sure that creatives, drama students and others had routes to work, so that they weren't learning all of these fantastic skills, getting a degree in drama or whatever it might be, and then not being able to use those talents and not being able to earn a good living from that. And so they've got both the ghost tours and away days and stuff that they do with the various public and the private organisations and others. And they've got a kind of theatre and education initiative that they run as well alongside that, to support new talent and help young people who might not otherwise get access to creative skills and drama access those kinds of activities. So another example there. We've got Taslima here, who's got her sunglasses on. Taslima's based at an organisation and set it up, Creative Design and Manufacture UK. They've got this fantastic warehouse in Ardwick, not far from Piccadilly Station in Manchester. And they do all sorts of textile training, skills building, often supporting women for whom English isn't their first language, or they may have been out of work for some time, and they help with their knowledge and skills around creativity, arts and textiles. They do some fantastic work there. I won't run through all of these, it's just giving you a bit of a flavour. I'll perhaps jump to the barge down at the bottom. So we've got Idle Women there, they're called, and Idle Women are based in Lancashire. They use arts as a way of rebuilding communities, regenerating communities and supporting those that perhaps don't have a voice and perhaps have least access to kind of arts activities. They also have a wider interest in the environment and sustainability, and so a lot of their projects and initiatives meet both sort of arts and cultural needs, health and well-being needs, and building resilience of the environment and climate change and those sorts of things. And they've got this, they've got the barge, they've got various workshops that they run, and they've got some land where they're developing a kind of growing project, growing all sorts of herbs and like lavender and others to feed into other sort of health and well-being initiatives that they run. So this just is really to give you a bit of a flavour of the diversity of types of social enterprises out there, to show you a range of characters who are running these things, and to spark imagination in you, either with your own ideas or with people you might know who are running something that really could have legs in terms of being a social enterprise. And And I show you those characters because, you know, one of the things I get people to think about is, you know, are these people born or made? And it's a combination of both, really. Entrepreneurs of any kind have a kind of a drive and a determination in them, and a level of sort of vision and creativity. But often a lot of their skills and a lot of their characteristics evolve over time. This slide here sort of, it's getting you to think about a couple of things. You know, it's getting you to think, who are you? What are your skills and attributes and characteristics? What are you bringing to the table in trying to develop a social enterprise or to get an idea off the ground? I guess it's also getting you to see that social entrepreneurs are not that different from any other kind of entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs are, you know, they're passionate people, they're risk-taking, they're resilient, they're perhaps solutions focused and resourceful. What I will say with social entrepreneurs is they perhaps might be a little bit more altruistic. They might have to make contacts and connections across different segments of the community in order to develop and grow an idea that meets community need and bring a community on board with them to evolve what it is they're doing. And there may or may not be another level of sort of compassion there in order to create that surplus that then gives back to the community in some way. There are lots of private businesses, profit for purpose businesses, who are led by people with lots of these skills and characteristics, but their governance model doesn't necessarily dictate that the surplus profits have to go back into the community, which social enterprise would. And, you know, that's not to get confused. You know, social enterprises, as I've said, they have to make a profit, otherwise they can't be sustainable. But they, you know, they will also employ people. So quite often people can get confused thinking that everybody's doing all this stuff for free and it's all voluntary work, which isn't the case. Social enterprises are set up to run viable businesses where people earn a good living. Often they're championing living wage as a minimum, if not, you know, much more than that in terms of remunerating people for the jobs that they do. And there's no reason why you know, these sorts of businesses aren't something you can consider to make your own ideas viable. What I've also got here is a kind of a little list of blue options. This is just highlighting there are things called community businesses. It's just another term that people use. People use social enterprises. They use voluntary community and social enterprise sector as a term. Profit for purpose sometimes gets brought in, and then there's these things called you know, community businesses. Often creative businesses, depending on their structure, and creative, cultural and heritage businesses link into this world. And this list of blue here is just thinking about slightly different take and slightly different set of characteristics that community businesses might have. Community businesses are often place-based. They're in a locality, they're in a community, and they're there to serve that community. It might be a community centre, it might be an arts organisation. You know, there are even examples, you know, of laundrettes and pubs and all sorts of businesses that have set up to provide amenities for that community, but then reinvest the profits back. And so often in these community businesses, someone might be seen as a bit of a local leader, have lots of community connections. They may have links to arts, culture and heritage, or particular interest of that in their area, and they'll have sort of creative and innovative ideas for leading change they see needed in their area. So often those skills are needed across the board, but it's just to identify, and we'll come back to this later when we talk about legal structures, that social enterprises can sometimes operate in a sector or a theme, or across regions or nationally, or they can operate in a very localized way. And it all comes down to, you know, the market, the need, and what it is you're trying to develop. So that's some thinking around who are social entrepreneurs and what are their characteristics. Just before we start to wrap up this section of the webinar, wanted to give you a feel for the scale and impact of the social enterprise space and social enterprise sector, because it's not to be sniffed at. It's quite significant, and as this slide demonstrates, There are 360,000 voluntary community and social enterprise organisations nationally, and these employ a significant number of people. Over 2 million people are employed in the voluntary community and social enterprise space. It's turning over 120 billion, which is around a fifth of all UK businesses. So when you look at this en masse, collectively, it's a significant part of the economy. And often people overlook it, or they don't even think about it. They're not aware of it. And when people develop an idea and they think, oh, can I do this? What is this? They're part of a wider movement, and they're part of a significant chunk of the way our country works. So just something to bear in mind. I was bringing it back to Stockport specifically here with these next little bits of information, where every few years something called the State of the Sector, is in the State of the Voluntary Community and Social Enterprise Sector report comes out, and there's one very recently come out for Greater Manchester, broken into the 10 boroughs, of which Stockport is one. And it's helping you to see again how this trickles into your local area. So currently they're in the region of 1,672 of these organisations, and you'll see the majority, 2/3 are micro organisations, very small organisations, perhaps only turning over less than £10,000. So they're not big and they're not large. Their impact may well be, but the people running them might be running them part-time, or they might be running them on heavily on volunteer models. However, of that, there's clearly a good few hundred that are in the remaining organisations there that are significant and larger, and the sector's turning over an income in the region of 114 or just under 115 million a year, in terms of contracts, in terms of grants, in terms of trading with the public. And we'll come back to look at income generation strategies in the next sections. It's showing that 63% of organisations have at least one source of non-public sector funds, and just under 50% of organisations have used, their reserves in the last 12 months. And that's just an indicator of, how, whilst there is this kind of buoyant and growing social economy, actually COVID has had an impact, and making sure that we support you as well as we can to grow and develop sustainable ventures and create reserves and create surpluses to reinvest is key in the current climate with austerity and COVID and challenging times ahead. There's also, when you look sort of nationally at how things play out, an organisation called Social Enterprise UK, and to the right hand side of this slide we've got some stats and data from some of their reports, as well as one from Power to Change. So Social Enterprise UK is saying that there's 100,000 social enterprises in the UK, and that social enterprises specifically, so not charities and not volunteer-led groups, but nationally social enterprises contributing 60 billion to the economy and employing nearly 2 million people. And likewise, there's a bubbling and growing group of these community enterprises, often championed by an organisation called Power to Change, amongst others. The big local trust has also empowered and encouraged a lot of community enterprises to thrive. They're growing sectors and growing sections of the economy and the business market there. And what you'll find is they're very diverse and they're very focused in terms of impact, and they'll try and squeeze every ounce of impact and value out of what they do. So what they're showing you here is that nationally, just under half of social enterprises are less than 5 years old. So mirroring other information, a lot of these are kind of small startups, growing. Interestingly, again, just under half of social enterprises that were mapped through Social Enterprise UK's research, grew their turnover last year. So in spite of COVID and in spite of the challenges that we face, these organisations have been able to grow. because they've been meeting, be able to step up, I guess, into the needs that have come out through the pandemic. And if I'm honest, a lot of them were running all of the stuff for decades before the pandemic hit, and they were just ready to keep operating, keep supporting and innovate in areas where perhaps others couldn't. And there are details there around, the profits, or those that, made a profit last year. Something else to bear in mind with social enterprises, they're very inclusive and pretty diverse as organisations go. And 47% of social enterprises are led by women. 31% have directors from Black, Asian and other ethnic backgrounds on their boards. Although it doesn't say it here, there's a lot of organisations that have people with disabilities, physical or mental health disabilities on their boards, and that's not unusual. And it's worth highlighting that it's a great space and a great sector to create opportunities for people. A number of them, 72%, said that they were living wage employees, so they're really trying to be ethical in terms of the way they pay and the way they operate. That said, there's still work to be done by the looks of it. And 22% of these operate in the most deprived areas of the UK. And that's not unusual, because if you imagine, quite often social enterprises are going into areas to try and create services, opportunities, activities, amenities in places where traditional markets would fail. Traditional markets can't get a viable model there, but using a social enterprise model, which combines sort of funds, fundraising, commissions, trading and other ways to pool resources to make things happen, a social enterprise model can often start and flourish in an area where traditional businesses might not find a way to make it work. And last but not least, this additional side to social enterprises, they're not all, but certainly many are putting environmental goals at the heart of what they do. There are some social enterprises for whom the environment is their core sole purpose, and improving the environment, reducing climate change and these sorts of things could be key. But often, because of the ethics and the way these organisations have been set up to benefit both people and planet, as you'll see from the stats there, social enterprises are often doing what they can to improve the environment and to tackle the challenges that face us. And I think that's going to be a growing trend. So just wanted to put some context around this sector, and when we talk about who sets these up and why and how. Before we wrap up and have a break, I just was going to recap really on what some of the differences of these businesses are compared to traditional business or private sector business. So quite often a social enterprise has socially motivated values, vision and goals, and it's not just setting up to seek to create profits for shareholders. It's seeking to create some sort of legacy for the future. It's not just looking to set up to be sold on. It's looking to create real lasting change for people, planet, communities and all sorts of things. As I'm saying, the impact that they make, it's done with intention and it's done with purpose, and often social enterprises need to measure their impact more closely than other business types. Lots of businesses will track and measure all sorts of things, and many private sector businesses and corporates now have these terms like corporate social responsibility, or they're measuring certain goals and certain impact that they might have. But a social enterprise will often measure this in order to report back to their funders, for example, or in order to design and evidence base the services that they're developing, and they want to know the social value they're creating and the saving to the public purse that they're creating with the services that they develop. We've talked before and said that some of their income generation methods can be quite different to the private sector. So, looking at funding, fundraising, can be quite different to the private sector, alongside trading and commissioning. And, there are special social investment funds that are different, slightly different to traditional loans and equity investment that are done in a different way in order to support social entrepreneurs in particular. The staffing makeup of these organisations may differ. So there may well be, certainly in the smaller organisations, the startups, and some large organisations that are seeking to create wide opportunities, volunteer-led models and pools of volunteers involved in certain aspects of an organisation are not unusual. And then obviously they have employees and staff, but they might have particular recruitment principles around supporting people with disabilities, supporting people with barriers to the workplace in ways over and above what private organisations and traditional business might do. And we talked before remuneration. So people are paid, to run these things. They're paid well to run social enterprises, provided they're turning over the income to do that. And often social enterprises will have clear communications, or be championing things to do with the living wage or other ways to make sure that people are earning a good living for what they're doing. Often they'll have both a kind of social and environmental awareness around what they're doing, and they need to keep an eye on that. Certain types of social enterprises have their assets locked in for the benefit of the community. I've mentioned a few times how they're making surplus profits, or they're making an income, and they reinvest that back in the community. Certain structures, for example, a community interest company, we'll come back to again, they have this asset lock, whereas traditional companies wouldn't have that. It's written in so that as directors might change and come and go, and as an organisation might end up being owned by a different group, the assets are locked in for the benefit of the community. And then just finally, there's a point to bear in mind that often social and ethical organisations are wanting to support others, basically, and in their supply chain. So when they're buying food and catering, when they're buying stationery, when they're buying in certain specialist associates or professional services, marketing, PR, they may well be choosing to buy from other social enterprises in order to make sure that the ripple effect from their own organisation is having as much impact as it can have. So in developing a social enterprise organisation, perhaps thinking about what's the difference you can make, in addition to improving health and well-being, tackling social justice issues, educational barriers, or whatever it might be that you're looking at. By the way that you run your business and set up your organisation, you may well be able to choose to create a social and ethical supply chain that not only gives you great services, but means that the money that you spend then gets spent with organisations where it's really going to make a difference. So those are some of the points of difference. I wonder if you can think of others. It's a case of having a think about whether this is a kind of sector, and is this a kind of space that's it sounds exciting for you, and is a place where you would want to kind of work and operate and gain support to do so. So thinking about what I was saying before, all those different case studies, this is just reiterating that there's all sorts of sectors where social enterprises operate, from health and well-being, arts and culture, working in the environment. There are social enterprise cafes and catering businesses where people are making whatever, pies, pasties, soups, cakes, bread and baking, where they're set up. They look like, to all intents and purposes, like a private business, but because of the way they're set up, they're reinvesting all of their profits back in the community, and perhaps they're employing people from particular backgrounds that have barriers to the workplace and these sorts of things. So every sector going, from digital communications, lots in education and learning, people running campaigns, you name it, there's social enterprises in pretty much every sector going, and it's just a shift in mindset and a shift in the way people operate and earn and invest in terms of how they grow and do what they do. So bring it back to you, really. Have a think, how is what you're doing making a difference? Have you got some of those characters characteristics and attributes that we talked about before. Is this space the kind of environment that sounds like it might be of interest to you, or you know you're firmly working in it and you're needing support to grow? If that's the case, then I would say do pick up with the next set of our webinars we've got coming up in this series, and we'll look forward to sharing more on these topics around governance, around planning funding, and all sorts of other things. So I'm going to close this webinar for now, and we'll look forward to seeing you in the next webinar. But in the meantime, any questions, thoughts or comments, you're very welcome to contact me directly. And these details, we have lots of events that we run that you could come and along to, both physically and virtually. And obviously Sector 3, who's commissioned these webinars, are a great source of support, funding and access to information for anybody looking at developing voluntary community social enterprise organisations. So I'll say farewell for now, and we'll see you in the next webinar coming up shortly.